Hello everyone, welcome to Daska Discusses. Well, here we are. Where's that spooky season coming around, and no one loves a horror film quite like me. I know we've got a lot of horror fans out there, but my friends out there, there are a couple that do like horror, but myself, having made a few short horror films. I mean, they're not the best, but it's just a bit of fun. So let me just share this to all the socials. One sec. Today, what I'm going to be doing, Dimitrios Materas Yassas to you too, mate. What we're going to be doing while I just share this, join the live stream, people. Okay, now. Yes, I've got a PowerPoint here behind me, and the whole deal is this, guys. Have we got any dramatic music? No. Well, wrong one. Hang on. We've got 3 weeks until Halloween, right? So that means, obviously, I had to work out a way to do this. I want to tell everyone what my top horror films are. Now, 100 is a lot, and it's a bit draining, obviously. So, POLTERGEIST first. One sec, I'll just share this live now. So, as I was saying, I decided to do with the whole top 66 horror films. So, divide 66 by 3, and you get 2 plus 2 is 4, minus 3, 1 is quick maths. 22 films. So 22 tonight, next week another 22, and then the week after, the last 22 for Halloween. So we're looking at top 66 horror films. We're going to start at the top at 66, obviously, and we'll go from there. Now, what I constitute as horror is, like, it's not just horror as in, we're talking about different types of horror. There's like supernatural, sci-fi, gore, zombies, cannibalism, whatever you want to say. These are what I think are, 1, the greatest horror films of all time, 2, quite scary, 3, left some sort of impression on me, right? Now, you may not agree with a lot of them, some you may not even have heard of, but we're looking at this from 66 to 44, so let's do this. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, but here we go. So, top 66 horror films from me, number 66, and I hope you like this transition. Are you ready for this? It's hilarious. Okay. And the first one on the list is number 66, Poltergeist 2, The Other Side. Now, I'm going to try not to go on and on, but I will comment on a few things. Now, the last on the list is Poltergeist 2, The Other Side. Obviously, a huge fan of 80s horror, and Poltergeist 1, we know, is fantastic, and I'm sure will feature later in the list, but Poltergeist 2, although it does get a bit of flack for being a bit cheesy and not as good as the first one, there are some genuine scares in this. Now, the visual effects really don't hold up. The acting is quite wooden, and the characters themselves are a real shadow of their former selves from Poltergeist 1. You watch Poltergeist 1 and you can see how Stranger Things and so many other films got influenced by it, right? And, you know, Spielberg had his hand in Poltergeist 1 as well, as did Tobe Hooper, the director of Texas Chainsaw as well. But I say that Poltergeist 1 and E.T., which would be made at the same time, we know that as well. If you're a fan of Spielberg, you'll know that. They're in the same universe. Poltergeist 2, although it is very weak as a sequel, there are some exceptional scary parts in it. Now, why I think this deserves to be in the list is because of Reverend Kane, one of the greatest villains in any horror film. He, in terms of villains, he's in the top 20. And if you don't know who that is, I wish I had a picture to show you, but he sings that weird, God is in his holy temple. He is quite, Julian Beck is the actor, and he unfortunately was dying of, he had stomach cancer when he actually filmed that film. When he was filming, and he actually passed away during the production of it, and he plays such an integral part in that film. He's the only really good part of that film, and it's quite sad to see this guy acting like that, but he just looks scary when you see him, so I give that's at number 66 for me. So, moving on from that, let's go. At 65, I hope that I'm not blocking the actual PowerPoint. Hang on. No, I'm not. Okay. 65, we've got Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Now, I'm sure that there's other Freddy films that will appear on this list, but I just think New Nightmare is important to be here because, okay, like it may not be the scariest Freddy film out there, but I think it's because of that whole, what do they call it? That meta, meaning that it's aware of itself. It kind of used this thing where Wes Craven, the actual director, is actually in the film. Heather Langenkamp from the original Freddy Krueger is in it as well. And she's playing herself, like her real person in real life. And Freddy is transferring over to the real world. So I think it deserves that. And I think the design of Freddy is okay, apart from his hat. But there is some good scares in there. And in terms of a Freddy Krueger film, it deserves to be on here because of that whole aspect of being in the real world, if that makes sense. So I'm going to put that at number 65. Moving on to 64. Ooh, The Sixth Sense. Here we go for our first kind of ghost kind of thing. Now, no spoilers here, but if you've seen The Sixth Sense, you know that it is an integral part of that 90s horror film band of films that came out, right? Now, M. Night Shyamalan, the director, there is some certain scenes in this that are quite scary, right? So it deserves to be on the list for that, but everyone knows that I just think that this film really did use that whole twist ending to its effect, and there was some significantly scary parts in it as well. And not in terms of like jump scares, but in terms of like there's one part with this lady, I'm not going to spoil it, but it involves a videotape and watching back on her sick stepdaughter and what happened there. I find that scene to be, and the father's watching it. I can't go into too much detail, but I find that scene really confronting and hard to watch. And just the music that kicks in and the reason why this ghost communicates with Cole, who, you know, is played by Haley Joel Osment. This is a really memorable film. It deserves to be there. If you haven't seen it, watch it. Definitely 100%, but it is quite creepy. All right, 64 done. Here we go for 63. Now, there is going to be a Friday the 13th film in there. Now, I'm going to put this at number 63, and it's quite high on the list. Well, low in terms of, well, low, high, whatever. Look, this isn't a scary film. Not really. I mean, it is quite creepy in terms of, I don't know, slasher films. It was the one that kind of didn't start at all. It did borrow a lot from Halloween. Halloween, the original Jock Carpenter. You can't go wrong there. But Friday the 13th Part 1 deserves this spot because of what happened from this and the amount of imitators from it and the birth of, well, not so much Jason Voorhees because, you know, spoilers, I'm not going to get into that as well, but I just think that it's in there because of, one, a great ending, and two, it is something funny you look back to watch. I know it's very dated now, 1980, but it deserves to be there because of a few reasons. One being that it started that whole Friday the 13th franchise, and two, it's still quite creepy. It's on Netflix at the moment as well, so I'll give it a 63 for that. Next. Okay. Now we've got at number 62, we've got The Descent. I haven't seen this for a while, but as the poster says, the best horror thriller since Alien. That is a big call, but I'm going to say that The Descent is quite visceral and violent and gory and disgusting, and it is quite scary at the same time. I mean, I always thought, oh yeah, it'd be cool to do like, you know, cave diving, and then you go watch something like this and you're like, oh hell no, I'm not doing that. Scary? Yes. Worth a look? Well, it is quite gory, so if you're into horror films, but if you're not too fazed by blood and guts and everything, then The Descent is for you. Don't know if it's on Netflix, but a bunch of girls go into a cave diving, and then, well, I don't know what they are, vampires, bats, kind of come alive and start attacking them. It is quite confronting, and it is very claustrophobic type of film. So, number 62 for me is The Descent. Alright, here we go. Let me just double check that everything's alright there. Hang on, guys, one sec. Alright, good. At 61, we have got Get Out, directed by Jordan Peele. I think I enjoyed this a lot more than Us. And I think Get Out is something that a lot of VCE media classes do study because of its ideologies, about race as well, obviously. It was a breath of fresh air, I think, when it came out, because a lot of horror films are just run-of-the-mill, either slasher or whatever, but Jordan Peele did nail it with Get Out. In terms of why it's not higher on the list, I think it deserves to be. It is one of those great thriller/horror films. A lot of people won't even call it a horror film, but I think it deserves to be there because it is quite violent as well. But the premise behind it, that whole bit, lobotomies and all that, that's definitely horror conventions right there. So for me, 61 for Get Out definitely deserves to be on the list. Let's move on to 60. Oh boy. Here we go. Number 60, the first Stephen King film on the list. Now, obviously, big fan of Stephen King novels. Used to read them a lot as a kid and as a teenager as well. Yes, probably thinking you read them as a kid. Yes, I read Pet Sematary when I was probably grade 6. And The Shining, probably year 8, year 9. They did scare me. Creepy, scary books. Now, I think Carrie deserves to be here because, it is a long time ago it was made. If you look back at it, I know they remade it, but the original one, there is something quite disturbing, especially about the prom scene, and it's in the poster right there. You really feel sorry for the protagonist here. You really feel sorry for her family life with her crazy mother and her friends that bully her. And then finally she becomes prom queen, and then all of a sudden she gets that pig's blood tipped all over her, and then she just unleashes, which, yes, you look back and you might think it's a bit cheesy now, the way they do all those weird effects, but Brian De Palma, who was the director, did a really good job in, I think, bringing this book to life. And a bit of a footnote here, I think Stephen King actually wanted to throw out the manuscript for this. He wasn't a big fan of it, and his wife took it out and said, no, get it published, and look what happened there. So it was his first proper novel, I'm pretty sure. So, number 60 for me is Carrie. And number 59, we are looking at The Fly. David Cronenberg directed this, starring, is that a blank? Jeff Goldblum, Gina Davis. Love Jeff Goldblum. This falls into that horror/sci-fi about a guy that's obviously trying to come up with some sort of teleportation kind of machine. Now, they parodied this in The Simpsons as well. He goes into the machine to test it. He puts I think a chimpanzee in it. The chimpanzee kind of implodes on itself. It's quite gross. But this version, he goes in, he says, you know what, I'm going to test this because I'm a scientist. He goes in and a normal housefly is in there. And then slowly, as the movie goes on, he starts transforming into a fly. It is quite grotesque, gross at a lot of times, but you really can't go wrong with this. The makeup that they used in this is quite amazing. I'm pretty sure it's a remake of an older film as well. The Fly is up there because it is just a great film with an interesting premise. It's gross, but I put it up there for number 59 for me. Next. Alright, number 58. Don't Breathe. Now, look, it's got that guy from, what's his name? Stephen Lang from Avatar, who plays the bad guy in Avatar. He plays the bad guy in this. So, just about a bunch of, not kids, but, people about 20-somethings that find out that this house has got a lot of, they want to rob a house, and they find out that, I don't know, I can't remember if they know that there's a blind guy who actually lives in there. I think they do. and they go in and they think, oh yeah, he's blind, we'll be able to rob everything. But the tables turn. This is like 100% horror from the creators of Evil Dead, the remake. I think it is quite intense, and the ending is quite disturbing as well. There is a sequel, which I haven't seen yet, but I was a fan of this film, but I just think that the ending of it really took it way too disturbing for my liking, but whatever. Like, I've seen a lot of horror films, guys, and a lot of disturbing ones, and some of them I haven't even put on the top 66 list because, disturbing doesn't mean that it deserves a spot in the top 66 horror films of all time, because unless they're like actually scary, then I'm not going to put them on. And I'm never going to do a disturbing films list because, yeah, it's just not my thing. No, I mean, why? You're probably thinking, well, why did you even mention that, or why talk about disturbing films in a way like, why aren't they on the list? Well, when I had to study censorship at uni as well, part of the degree I was doing media as well, and film and censorship, we did have to do a few things on that, and research on banned films or ones that have been re-released or whatever. But I just find that not worth it. So moving on from that. Alright, number 57, An American Werewolf in London. John Landis, made Animal House, made the Thriller clip, and you can definitely see why Thriller was influenced by this film as well. And look, this is probably one of the first ones that's like a comedy / horror. There is some really funny elements to this. There is some funny parts in it. I mean, his mate that keeps coming back visiting him as a zombie is quite scary and funny at the same time. There are some genuine scares in this. The first probably 10 minutes are quite creepy and scary when they're in the where is it? The Highlands in England? I can't remember, but yeah, it's like Britain somewhere. Definitely deserves to be on the list because of that whole werewolf element, that whole last act, and the really weird dream sequence of the Nazi werewolves, which is really quite disturbing and creepy as well. So yeah, how many times have I said creepy? A lot. 57 for me for An American Werewolf in London. Oh, here we go. Oh boy. Oh, that face. That face. Number 56. Now this is where it gets scary. Well, is it scary or more Number 56, we've got Misery. I read this book when can't remember how old I was, probably a teenager. It is a Stephen King book made into a film. Kathy Bates did win an Oscar for this. I don't know if it was actress or supporting actress, but she definitely deserves this. Basically, Paul Sheldon, played by James Caan, is a writer. He gets into a car accident. He's a big romance writer, and he gets saved by Kathy Bates, Annie, who's a nurse, and she looks after him in this secluded house in the snow. And, well, she kind of keeps him there as a prisoner. And a lot of films have tried to take the idea of Stephen King here with Misery, with crazy fans, and adapt it, but nothing beats Misery, and it definitely deserves number 56 on the list. There are some real intense moments and really great examples of like editing that a lot of teachers use as an example. Like, for example, how many times am I going to say that? When he's on his wheelchair just investigating around the house, and she's coming back from the shops or the grocery store, and she's trying to get in, and we're cut between her and Paul trying to get doors open with his hairpin. It is quite brutal in some parts. They did change it around. In the book, she chops off his leg, but in this one she just smashes it with a sledgehammer. The hobbling scene, quite disturbing. 56, definitely one of those ones where you're not into horror 100%, but you want something that's really scary and quite unnerving. Definitely going with Misery with number 56. Alright. Okay, we're getting into controversial territory here. So, Rob Zombie's Halloween at number 55. I'm going to probably get a lot of flack for this. And people are probably like, why are you putting this in? Because anyone who's a Halloween fan knows that well, they're not big fans of this film. I actually don't mind Rob Zombie's Halloween Part 1. Yeah, a lot of people didn't like the whole thing seeing Michael Myers as a kid and what happened. I didn't mind that. It is quite vulgar, obviously, with some of the language used and like just the overall, it feels like a very, like, not dirty film, but you're just like really uneasy with some of the dialogue. So I can see why people don't like that, but it's Rob Zombie for you. It's got that gritty kind of feel to it. When Michael becomes, the shape, I think that's where the film picks up, and it just ends up being a remake of the original. It deserves to be on here because it does have some good thrills, but again, they've remade Halloween now with the Jamie Lee Curtis one, and then in a couple of weeks, sorry, they're going to be doing Halloween Kills comes out, and then Halloween Ends. So yeah, number 55 on my list is Rob Zombie's Halloween. How are we going with time? All right. Number 54. 54, we're looking at the first shark film that we're looking at. So prepare to jump out of your skin. Who will save you? Well, the thing is with open water is that, yes, we all know Jaws is the greatest, like, shark film out there, I think. Oh, wait, hang on. What about Sharknado? No. But open water definitely deserves a spot on here because of the way it's been filmed. You're out there with these two people that get left by their scuba lesson, whatever they're doing, like a scuba tour. They're left out, and it's based on a true story. And then you've got all these mako sharks or whatever they are attacking them over a course of a couple of days while they're floating in the ocean. This film, I remember watching it only a couple of times. It does really make you feel uneasy, and don't watch it before the summer. And don't watch it if you're going to go snorkeling or something like that, because it's just not your conventional shark film. It is, I think it's hyper realistic the way they do it. I'm not scared of the ocean, but after seeing this, and you see something like Jaws where it's like a big huge shark eats everyone. This is like many small sharks and what they can do. And yeah, anyway, moving on from number 54, next. All right. Number 53, Hellraiser. Well, from the 80s. What can you say about Hellraiser? 1, the iconic pinhead here that we have. 2, the imagery in this is quite... The cinematography, 1, the imagery, the glimpses you get of Pinhead and his Cenobites. He's actually not in it that much, but when he's on screen, the presence of Pinhead, you look at this poster, he is quite scary to look at, and some of his dialogue is really chilling. What does it? Save those tears. I can't remember what he says, but yeah. Not your conventional horror film for anyone out there thinking, oh yeah, let's watch a horror film, let's watch Hellraiser. It is really, really violent and quite gross in a lot of parts. Gory. We're talking extreme gore here, so stay away if you're not a huge fan of that. It is a bit slow at points, but I just think it deserves number 53 here. 1, because the iconic Pinhead, and just for those scenes alone, it definitely deserves this spot. I know there's many sequels that happen after that, but Hellraiser, definitely up there. And they're remaking it too, so there you go. Alright, here we go. Now, I had a bit of... 52, we got Orphan. Now, I had a bit of a thing... I had a thought to myself, do I put Orphan in or do I put The Good Son in? Which is very similar in a way. But Orphan, obviously, there's something wrong with Esther. Can you keep a secret? Now, when you watch this film, it's just about a girl that gets adopted by an American family. She's from Russia or Ukraine, I can't remember. And, she's a real nice girl, 12, 13 years old. And you think, oh, yeah, cool. But then slowly, things just start to go wrong. People start getting injured when she's around. It's a very similar concept to The Good Son. But then with that, the middle act of the film turns full-blown horror. And I'm talking like violent, hammer to the head horror. And then that last act where it's all revealed, can't spoil it, there is some real great acting by the antagonist here. I can't remember her name, but she's in the Hunger Games as well. I think they're doing a prequel to this. Is it accessible for everyone? It is quite violent as well. A lot of these are quite violent, but scary, yes. And a bit over the top near the end, possibly, yes, but definitely deserves number 52. Vera Farmiga is in this as well, and that Skarsgård bloke is in it too. They play pretty good roles. Reminds me of The Good Son with Macaulay Culkin and Frodo Baggins. Elijah Wood. So yeah, definitely 52 for me for Orphan. Let's keep going, shall we? Alright. Guys, let me know what you think in the comments. 51. Oh boy, yeah, arachnophobia. I don't like spiders, but I don't have arachnophobia. However, when I saw this film when I was very young, probably 11 or 12 years old, I can't remember, I did end up checking underneath my bed and around my cupboards for spiders, because if you don't like spiders, stay away from this film. This is a lot of scares. It does turn out to be a bit ridiculous near the end, turns into a bit of a monster film, but just some of the imagery of like a spider crawling in your bed and you don't know it, and then all of a sudden you get bitten and then the guy just dies. That's like the first 10 minutes. I was like, okay, spiders, the way they do it, the way people get bitten and the way they just die is quite scary. So 51 for me, arachnophobia. Who's in this? The main actor is Jeff Daniels from Dumb and Dumber as well. He plays a pretty good role. But I don't know how this film's rated PG, because it is quite disturbing. There's a bit where like people are eating popcorn and all of a sudden the spider crawls out of their nose. It was like the scariest thing I've seen back then. I've seen scary things, but yeah. Alright, so 51. Oh, here we go. Another Freddy Krueger film. We're the Dream Warriors. A Nightmare on Elm Street 3. The Dream Warriors. Look, guys, I'm wearing my Freddy Krueger top. I'm a big Elm Street fan, and one day I will do a ranking of the Freddy Krueger films. But I'll tell you what, Freddy Krueger Part 3, A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors, deserves to be in this list. Does it deserve to be in the top 20? No, because it's not the scariest film. Now, it's not the scariest, but in terms of horror, this is more of a fantasy horror. It is a great film if you're a fan of the genre. Obviously, I think Part 1 is superior. Oh, it's very difficult because Part 3 is such a great film. I think this is the most accessible Freddy film for anyone out there if you don't want too much blood and guts. But just a bunch of kids in a hospital where they band together, and in their dreams they have these powers and they have to take down Freddy. That's all I'm going to say. But having Heather Langenkamp and John Saxon come back, reprising their role from the first film, I think it's great. It deserves to be 50. There is some horror parts in it. There is some blood and violence in it. It is actually on Netflix now at the moment, but if you haven't seen Part 1 at least, I wouldn't go jumping in watching Part 3, but it is a great film, and I never get bored of watching it, and an epic soundtrack too. So yeah, definitely in there for Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors. Alright, I've only got a few left till the end of the video. I think we're going up to 44. Number 49, Eli Roth presents, well, Tarantino presents Hostel. I'm not into, like, I don't mind Saw. Hostel, you're a cheat bull. I was first. Well, look, not a huge fan of Hostel, but in terms of horror, it definitely deserves to be in the list. The other two that came out were just trash. This one, going for that whole torture horror subgenre, I'm not a huge fan of it. Apart from the original Saw, all these movies like Escape Room and all that, they just rip it off, whatever. Hostel is really violent and really gross and quite confronting and quite disturbing. It is pure horror. But the premise of it, those guys that go on a trip to Europe and then they're, lured in by those girls, and then what happens, and then that whole club with the dog tattoo, it's quite disturbing, and, makes you think if this stuff actually happens. I don't know. I don't want anyone to know. But number 49, definitely Hostel for me. Deserves to be there. Okay, now we're moving on to Australian horror, number 48. The Babadook. Dook. If it's in a word or it's in a look, you can't get rid of the Babadook. Now, made in Australia, I think made in Melbourne too. Oh boy, what can I say about this? This is a highly psychologically scary film about a single mother with a kid, and the kid's, reading this book about the Babadook, and he believes the Babadook's living in his room. And then there's a bit of a twist ending. I'm not going to give away too much, but this is actually quite a scary film. It's unsettling, as it says on the poster there, but I can't say too much more about the Babadook more than the fact that if you want a good Aussie horror film that doesn't have a lot of blood or gore, that's pure, like, just intense, then I would go with the Babadook. There's going to be a lot more intense films coming up. I'll tell you what, guys, I'm looking forward to next week as well. So, yeah, because we've got from 44 till whatever. Okay. At 47, we have got Bram Stoker's Dracula at 47. Now, you could easily say, oh, this should be, further up the list. I wanted to put a Dracula film in here somewhere, right? But I just think Bram Stoker's Dracula, there is some horror conventions to it. It's more of a love story / horror, but I just think that whole imagery of vampires, actual Dracula, some of the scenes of him attacking people, and just some of the music, everything works well in this. Great soundtrack as well. Francis Ford Coppola directed it. I'm a big fan of Bram Stoker's Dracula. I think it is, if you're into your horror and you want to watch something about vampires, it definitely deserves to be on your list. So 47 for me is Bram Stoker's Dracula. Okay. At 46, hang on one sec. At 46, we've got Creep. Now, Creep, starring Mark Duplass, whatever you want to call him, however you pronounce it. This is actually on Netflix as well. It is about a guy who puts an ad out, say on what they call a Craigslist in America, and he wants to be filmed because he wants his future son, who isn't born yet, to know who he was and whatever. So this guy basically follows him around with a camera just to document his life because he's dying. There are some really ridiculous jump scares in this, a lot, that you're like, okay, this is getting a bit annoying. But Mark Duplass, however you say it, sorry, he actually is quite creepy. This is a quite disturbing kind of film. I think the end of it kind of loses it for me a bit, but there is a specific scene where our antagonist puts on a werewolf mask, and you've probably seen pictures of it in memes and whatever, but that is I remember watching it and I actually did get scared because of this whole point of view camera. If you're watching it from this documentarian's point of view the whole time, and when you see this part where it's really dark and this kind of, in this little room behind this front door, this guy's trying to escape from this house, and then there's Mark Duplass, the creep, with this weird, it calls it peach fuzz werewolf helmet on, and he starts making weird noises. That is pure nightmare fuel. When you've got someone who's not a serial killer or anything, but just a really weird guy and starts doing this weird stuff, it is quite creepy, even thinking about it. Yeah. So Creep on Netflix, all in that kind of documentary-esque kind of view. So the budget would have been really... This is something you'd see people making, people that can make a film with a very low budget. This is one of them. And it's not your conventional horror film, but it definitely deserves to be there. It should be even higher. But anyway, 45. 2 more until the end. Wow. The Exorcist Part 3. Do you dare walk these steps again? There is not enough said about The Exorcist 3. I just think that forget about Part 2. Part 1, we'll talk about that later in the list, obviously. But part 3, in terms of horror per se, there is some genuinely horror parts in this, genuinely scary parts in it. One of the greatest long takes of all time, meaning that, you know which one I'm talking about, the hospital scene. I don't want to spoil it, but like a sustained shot of like a good 2-3 minutes of one hallway, and then, wow, yeah, if you've never seen it, then I'm not even going to spoil it. But this film is not only, a sequel to The Exorcist, part 2. Forget about part 2. This is a great detective film. This is like a mixture of if this is like what Seven with Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman would be if it mixed with The Exorcist before Seven came out. The Exorcist 3 is a great, scary, but also a great detective film, and it really does question a lot of themes about faith as well, obviously like the original film, but it is a great film that I think is really underrated, and I don't think you can watch it on Netflix or anything like that, but if you're a fan of the first one, forget the second one, jump to this if you haven't seen it already. Big fan of it, especially that scene. What is it? What's the name of the serial killer in it? There is some genuinely really good cinematography in this. William Peter Blatty, the writer of the original Exorcist, is the director. There are different cuts of this as well. The acting is really, really good by George C. Scott. The dialogue is very sharp, witty. There's real comedic bits, really good dialogue in it, like I said, but that's because you got William Peter Blatty, who's the director. So definitely on my list, Exorcist 3. Wow. Okay, guys, last one for tonight. We have got at number 44, Dawn of the Dead. So, Dawn of the Dead, 1978. I think this is the first zombie film by George A. Romero. The first zombie film. This is the one that I think started it all, in my opinion. Now it's been remade a million times. 28 Days Later, and so many zombie films with viruses and this and that. But this one here, if you're into your zombie films, or if you think you've seen every zombie film, and if you haven't seen George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead, then really you haven't. Okay, Shaun of the Dead is a funny film. So if you like Shaun of the Dead and you want to see a pure horror version of it and not a comedy version, then definitely go and watch Dawn of the Dead. Okay, 1978 is quite dated, yeah, and some of the makeup and special effects still kind of hold up. The remake was not bad, but number 44, Dawn of the Dead, yeah, it deserves to be there because it is iconic George A. Romero. Same as Not a Living Dead, but we haven't mentioned that yet. So, we have gone through all that, people. We have gone through all our list for tonight. Just to recap, let's recap on everything. We had, at number 66, Poltergeist, The Other Side. Then we had Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Then we had The Sixth Sense. Then we had 63, Friday the 13th. We had The Descent at 62, Get Out, Carrie, The Fly, Don't Breathe, An American Werewolf in London, Misery at 56, Rob Zombie's Halloween at 55, Open Water at 54, Hellraiser, Orphan, wow, Arachnophobia 51, I Know on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors 50, Hostel, The Babadook 48, Bram Stoker's Dracula, 46 Creep, 45 The Exorcist 3, and 44 Dawn of the Dead. Wowee, guys, that was quite an epic know what a night we've had here on Dasker Discusses, I must say. Let me know what you guys thought of my list in the comments, and I will, well, obviously like, subscribe, comment, and we will continue this list. We're going to go from number 43 to 22 next week, and then obviously after that 21 to 1, and oh boy, it's going to be huge. Can't wait. So just want to say thank you to everyone who was out there who joined me, guys, and for commenting. Hope you enjoyed this. We're counting down to Halloween, the scary season, so let me know what you think, and don't forget to subscribe, share it, whatever, and I'll see you guys on the next episode of Dasker Discusses. 3, 2, 1, boom.